Hello, everybody. Me and Olivia are
Hello.
here, and we have TJ back, our beloved winner, the
That's
one and
right.
only.
Well, I
For
He's
wouldn't say
now.
beloved.
for now. He's gonna be joined by some company soon. Um,
Yeah, man.
okay. Well, first we'll talk about what happened in the week. So Oliver won HOH, and it was very funny when he won because you could immediately tell Landry was pissed off. It was the ladder comp, and the second Landry, George dropped first, and then the second Landry dropped, she immediately left the call. She was very upset that she lost. And
Oh,
she
I get it.
she knew
I was
she
also
was in
very
danger.
upset.
um, and yeah, pretty much immediately, Oliver, Dominic, and George, they didn't have to say anything. They're like, yeah, Landry's got to go. She's the number one target. So going into the session, it was pretty clear of what was going to happen. It was the Landry was going to go unless she won veto, and then if she did, Dominic was going to go. Because no one was going to evict George because everyone wants to bring George to final two with them.
Yep.
So yeah,
Which is definitely smart.
yeah. So not much game talk happens because I mean everyone kind of knows what has to be done. And then we get into veto, which was the chess competition. Oh, I will say one funny interaction that happened.
Flashbacks.
Um, uh, George was just talking. They were talking about like life or whatever. Landry had her like nails did, and she was talking about that. And then George was like, "Oh yeah, my girlfriend got her nails done or whatever." And everyone went, "Girlfriend."
What do you mean you have a girlfriend?
I didn't hear that. I didn't hear that happen. That sounds like
I thought George was, like,
a loser. Yeah, no, I agree. But turns out he's not.
I
Just play.
oh, I mean, I wasn't
Wow.
gonna go there. I just didn't think he. I don't know. I thought George was a little,
I just thought everyone's reaction to that was very funny.
but he has a girlfriend, and good for him.
I think he mentioned it in his application, so I knew that.
Oh, he did.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
But yeah, that was just a very funny interaction. And one funny thing, I think George said it. He was like, I love this cast, especially you four. I hope we all stay friends at the end of it, no matter what happens." Which is some nice foreshadowing. But yeah, it's the chess competition, the Night Moves one, and Landry kind of gets ganged up on, and she's first out. So, sucks for Landry. That kind of seals her fate. But Oliver is the one.
She
who
didn't
pulls
have
out
a
the win.
final two, willing to betray everybody for her, like Sunny did with me.
Yeah. So yeah, Oliver gets veto. And Landry, she does what Landry does best and starts making pleas to the best of her ability. She goes to talk to Oliver, and Oliver is pretty quickly like, "I'll hear you out, but your time was probably better spent going towards the other two. Like I kind of already have my mind made up."
Yeah.
But Landry tries to do her plea anyways, and then Oliver kind of lays it out of, "Look, you lied to me last week because you said you were going to vote to keep me, and then you didn't. You actively tried to convince other people to get me out. You're great at comps. It just doesn't make sense for me to save you. Like, I'm not using the veto." And then Landry keeps trying to plead, and she kind of starts putting on this like cry voice. I don't think she was actually crying. I think she was playing it up for sympathy.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
But Oliver is not having any of it, and so he's just kind of like, "Yeah, I'm not using it." And then Landry gets really fucking pissed. She's like, "Fine, whatever. I'm gonna stop wasting my time," and leaves.
Whew.
So
I mean, that girl, she never gives up.
she goes for it. And then Dominic talks to Oliver, and they start talking shit about Landry about the interaction that just happened. And Landry goes and talks to George. And this is I'm trying to like recall my memories. But their interactions were very funny because Landry her plea was kind of awful. Her whole plea was,
Oh yeah.
"You suck at the game, George, but I was awesome at the game, and it would be iconic if I won. I would be the most iconic winner. Therefore, you should vote for me to stay because it'd be the most iconic thing to happen. Because you're not winning. You're deciding who's winning. So here's why I should win." it was very, very strange.
Landry's strong suit in this game is not exactly making a case for her game. Oh, she is not good
She's
at the
right.
bottom of the house.
She's right. She would have been an iconic winner, but that's not exactly what you go around saying to people.
Yeah, like everything she said was correct, but like that, yeah,
Yeah.
don't. Yeah. And then she starts pulling the teary-eyed thing on George. And George gets very like upset and emotional and conflicted about it. George is a pretty emotional
Oh,
guy.
what?
Yeah, well, he's not quite crying. This wasn't like Seneven 2.0. But
Someone's always gotta cry at Final Four. It's a requirement.
but
Yeah, man.
but
That's when hearts get broken.
yeah. But he was very much like, I feel bad. But the Landry just kept kind of the whole time degrading George. It was like, you're not gonna win. Like, you did nothing in this game, but I would be awesome.
Oh,
So you should take me.
again, she's right. But you don't need to get going around telling
You
everybody
don't
that.
say that to someone. You're trying to stay in the
Yeah.
fucking game. Like, look, Olivia,
Yeah.
your game, you're gonna lose. You might as well lose against me. Like, what type of case is that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was fucked up.
Very strange. And then all three of them kind of start talking shit about Landry, George, Dominic, and Oliver. And then George is getting pretty heated. He was like, "What has Landry done in this game? Landry hasn't done anything." And then I'm like, "Well, George, maybe you should pipe down a little bit."
George!
Yeah, George.
I need George to take several seats. Because what the fuck do you mean?
Yeah,
If there's anybody who has done shit in this game, whether good or bad, it is Landry.
yeah.
Wow.
They start
That's
talking.
unbelievable.
They start talking shit about Landry's game, especially George.
The gall.
Um,
Gall.
and I just,
George, who are you?
I'm just like laughing at this whole thing. I'm like,
Okay,
oh my
Mr.
God.
Background Character. Anyways. Sorry.
Go on, Crow. Jesus.
And then we get to eviction. And Landry and George start like fighting. They're like yelling at each other. George evicts Landry, and I don't even remember what they said, but they're just going back and forth yelling at each other, which is very entertaining.
About what?
I don't know. Just I think Landry just called them. Oh, Landry had this whole thing of that those three were the mafia and she was Felicia, and she was being Felicia right
Well,
now.
she's kinda right. I don't know. I mean,
Which I thought was very
they
funny.
kinda did mafia her. They Felicia'd her.
Yeah. But they were fighting. I don't even remember what the fight was about. I think it was more just like Landry was like, "You all suck, fuck you," and everyone's like, "Shut the fuck up, Landry." And yeah, I wish I recorded it because it was
Poor
very
girl.
entertaining. But I don't even
Yeah, I
remember
wish
what they were
somebody
saying.
did.
I wish someone named Cade recorded it,
Olivia's never
but
gonna
he
get over
probably
that.
didn't.
Landry pretty much like I mean they go back and forth for so long. I mean it's like 5-6 minutes. I get uncomfortable to the point where like I have to like mute them because
Oh
like
my
Landry
God.
is just talking kind of out of her ass and just going off
Yeah.
about nothing at the end of the day. Like but it was
Wow.
just like crazy.
I wish I could have been there.
It was some like Amanda Zuckerman self-destruction shit is what I witnessed in there.
Yeah, she really went off. And then yeah, so that leaves us with our final three of Oliver, George, and Dominic. TJ, you have anything else to say about how this session went since you were the winner?
As far as Landry's game is concerned, there was a lot of conversation. There was a conversation that Oliver and the boys, if you will, the mafia, had that really exemplified why Landry had no chance of winning this game, even with 2 guaranteed jury votes, even with if she was in the finals against George. She's fake. She comes off as super fake. She is an absolute monster behind the scenes and when she's got shit to say when she's on top, but when she's at the bottom, she loses her mind. You see split hairs and all this shit. She just cannot keep herself together and like she gets super desperate. And the way that comes off, people notice that shit. And like if she had been in the finals, like she probably wouldn't have won against anybody because like she just made such a bad impression of herself whenever things weren't going the right way. And
Yeah.
I struggle to find moments. I mean, you guys would know more than me, but I don't know how great of a game she played overall. In the end of the day, but
Well,
I wouldn't say it was terrible, but as you said, like she a certain level of fakeness is required in Big Brother, but I think with her it just never really left her. So she gave a bad impression to a lot of people. I don't know what would have happened with her versus George. I think she would have had a chance, but
yeah.
yeah.
I think she would have won against George. I know Taylor and Spencer really had a bad taste in their mouth from George and Dominic's
yeah.
game. Um,
Oh, okay.
just because they were working with them, and then George and Dom kind of jumped ship as soon as they could. The second things didn't look too great. And so they kind of are iffy on those two.
Yeah.
The kind of general favorite is definitely Oliver.
Yes.
But yeah,
Shit, same here. Same
Thank
here.
God.
yeah. But yeah, I do think Landry would have had a chance against George, but
I would like to ask you, TJ, how do you
Yeah.
feel now that your winner pick from day one is gone and
Oh
she
God.
has no chance? How do you feel?
Well,
Were you expecting this, or did you think she was gonna pull it out?
it was kind of an erroneous first impression type of thing that Landry was going to get to the get to the end and win the game. My opinion changed very quickly as I started to kind of see Landry's interactions and just how not even the enemies that she made, but just how strong, like with Taylor and whatnot. Like she had a really bad rep going for her. And then once the final six went down, where like her and Mastify definitely dropped the ball in that round from what I remember. Like
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially Masterfy.
I thought that was
Injury.
I thought that was it for her at the end of the day because like
Yeah.
she needed Taylor that time and they let her
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, even me and Crow's opinions on Landry this entire season has just been a roller coaster because we loved her preseason and
Yeah.
even week one. And then we were like, okay, she's probably not going to win, but, she's entertaining. And then she started making some moves. She had the big three. And we were like, okay, maybe, like, if she survives this, she can come out on top. And then, no. No.
Yeah.
Once she refused to work with Taylor, or
I-
Taylor refused to work with her, it just was kind of over.
I agree. Phenomenal personality, like as far as characters are concerned, but as far as like the end game is concerned, this is no, I was gonna never mind. I was gonna say this is a straight man's game, but no, I'm just fucking around.
Oh my god!
Well-
Oh my-
I'm totally
Hey,
joking.
yo.
I'm totally
Well,
joking.
no,
I'm totally joking.
Oliver's-
Kate,
Like,
Kate, edit that out. Get canceled.
Well, no,
I'm totally kidding. I'm totally kidding.
Oliver's
Yeah.
definitely the front runner, and he's flirted with multiple men so far.
Oh, really? No.
Yeah.
Probably the gayest motherfucker we've had
Oh my
on.
God.
Other, whoa, other people in the game, like
Yeah.
still, or just?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
We can't disclose the full details, but
Yeah.
it has happened.
Wow. Okay.
Oliver's in there. He sent in his DR that he in another org he was voted like sluttiest house guest or something, and he's also fulfilled that role here.
You
Yeah.
might want to keep that part on the down low if he's trying to get to the end here. You might want to,
He's
downplay
never
that a
mentioned
little
it to
bit.
anyone else, just in his DR.
Fuck. All right.
Very entertaining.
It's just who he is. That's okay.
But yeah, well, let's start dissecting our final three. Let's who do we want to start with? Let's do George.
Let's start with. Yeah,
feel
I was
like George-
thinking that.
Yeah. What is there to say about George? I feel like his game is just so very closely tied to Dominic that he's just
Yeah.
Dominic's sidekick.
I can't think of one thing that George really orchestrated by himself or was doing outside of Dominic. Like, he never really made any strong connections that were comparable to his connection with Dominic.
Mhm.
So, I don't know. I just don't. Not
Yeah.
much
I'm
to
a-
say. He had a pretty strong social game in the start, and then it just kind of flatlined from there.
I know
makes
that George is the proverbial final two punching bag for a lot of people, host included, but like I may be in the minority when at first I sided with George, even if he wasn't the most active player, the biggest contender and whatnot. Just because I guess I like to fight for the little guy. But for me, George does not have the confidence, and because he himself knows that he isn't going to win. And like one of the things I overheard with him and Dominic, I mean, he was saying this to Dominic, yeah, I'm cool with losing to you straight up. Why is anybody going to vote for that?
Yeah.
And like,
Exactly.
He was in VC with us I think it was yesterday doing the part
The
2
HOH,
to the
yeah.
final HOH. He was saying the same things. Like he knows he's not going to win, so he's going in with that mindset. So even if he could come up with something in like a final 2 speech, he just doesn't have the confidence to like go through
Yeah.
with it.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's a
He's
mixture of mindset and gameplay.
Yeah.
he's just checked out. He really has. Yeah, I agree.
I mean,
But it yeah.
I've played
Sorry.
games. Sorry, yeah, I've played games before too, where even I was like, I don't think this is like I played a really great game, but I still went in like pitching that I did.
Exactly.
But which had net me the win before, even if I don't think I necessarily
Yep.
deserved it. But George is kind of just yeah, he's playing for second place at this point.
Yeah.
Which is
Knowing
unfortunate.
Yep.
Yeah. I will say, at the start of the season, Olivia mentioned it. We had really high hopes for him. He seemed, his duo with Dominic was interesting. He definitely, at first, we thought he might be a bit more of a smarter player, and good socially. But we didn't really ever see any of that.
Yeah, and yeah, it is mindset, but
Yeah.
it is also gameplay because I feel like what you were saying, Crow, we had high hopes for him because I feel like every podcast episode for every week, we were saying, well, I hope George does this because he could put this on his resume, or George could have done this to put himself in a better situation over anybody, even Dominic. And he just continuously didn't. He just
Yeah.
continuously followed Dominic and just didn't really make a name for himself in the game. So this
Yeah.
is kind of just how he set himself up, unfortunately.
Yeah, a lot of it. I know George a lot of times talks about like, oh, I haven't won anything, I haven't gotten any power, so I hadn't gotten a chance to do anything. But I'm like, you don't need to win a competition or anything to make moves to do that. You don't need power.
He had so many chances. He
Yeah.
had so many chances. Again, every week we're on here being like, George could have done this. It would have been smarter if George did this, but he didn't.
Yeah.
And that was just every week. And
Mhm.
now it's
You-
too late.
You know what's actually a thought I had in this Final Four? It would never happen unless like I was an actual player in there. A part of me believes that if somebody is guaranteed a spot in Final Two, then that's one less spot for me. I'm very curious as to what the dynamic would have been if George had somehow miraculously been eliminated at the Final Four and it was Landry, Dominic, and Aller because like
Oh, that would have been interesting.
the
That-
dynamic would have changed so fucking much. Like they wouldn't have had an easy goat to beat out at that point.
Mhm. That was definitely, I think, a bit of a talk in Final Six, Final Five, especially when Landry was trying to get Taylor to stay. But yeah, me and Olivia kind of saw it of like, George is kind of starting to be guaranteed Final Two. It would be
Yeah.
smart to take him out, to guarantee that spot better for you, but I think people like George and Dominic, they're always going to take each other, so that was a big majority of the house. And then everyone else just kind of more focused on, I have to win the final HOH, so I need to take out the big comp beasts like Landry
Yeah,
and
I got
Oliver.
exactly.
Um,
I hear you.
so yeah, I'm trying to think more about what to say with George. But early conversations with Dominic, he definitely seemed to have a more strategic mind, because I know at the beginning Dominic was kind of very hesitant to make any moves, but George was kind of pushing for Dominic to do something with it. But then that kind of went nowhere, which was unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to just sit here and talk shit about George. I think he could have played a better game, but he knows the game. He's very
Yes.
smart,
Yes.
and that's why it's just so disappointing because I know he could have done so much better.
Mm-hmm.
Tell you what,
And
if
I
I
hope
had
he does
some
better in
had
the
some
future.
more DRs to read from him, I might be able to. Okay, there's some stuff here. Okay, now I hear you.
But he
Dominic definitely uses his DR a lot more.
A lot more, yes.
George definitely had a good, strong social game. But instead of like utilizing that, it kind of just made him kind of an easy pawn that ended up kind of an easy pawn, an easy number that people kind of grouped in. And I was kind of surprised. I thought George would be kind of the person kind of being pulled into these alliances because he had such a good social game, and then that he would kind of pull Dominic in with him. But Dominic ended up doing that too. Dominic ended up being the one involved in
Yeah,
alliances, then
front
pulling
runner.
George in as the side piece, I guess. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, he there was so many things where I'm like, okay, well, this is a balanced duo of like Dominic has this and George has this, but each week it kind of Dominic ended up pulling more and more of the weight in that duo.
I agree.
Speaking of which, let's switch to talking about Dominic. Um, any
So
Olivia, you have any starting opinions? TJ.
I mean, oh, sorry. You could go, TJ.
I think Dominic, admittedly, of the three, is the person that I think I know the least about. Maybe I wasn't always following him. So, uh, overall, I mean, pretty well-rounded player, like competition-wise, strategically, socially. He seemed to be, as Crow said, a front runner for a lot of things going on. He obviously had pretty good relationships, and George was his right-hand man. And I guess his relationships were good enough to where other people were making poor decisions to keep him in the game, or not targeting him in a situation where he was in trouble. And overall, just being like a solid individual. Who would have thought that being somewhat nice and civil actually does wonders in this game? That probably did him a really big service at the final nine when Star and Donnie and Landry, when that group got targeted. Like, he didn't have to
Definitely.
get involved with that mess. So, um, yeah, from the final three, he obviously has to beat out Oliver, but I still think that Dominic, in his own right, like, is totally worthy of pulling this win off.
Yeah, and I've kind of been team Dominic from like the very beginning. I was very interested in Dominic and George and that entire duo. He's played a great game, but I do think it is also a mixture of gameplay and luck. He had a few blunders, but I mean overall it's just gonna kind of come down to who wins part three, I think.
I
Yes.
will say, with even with some of the mistakes Dominic has made, he kind of knew how to recover from them, which I think is a good aspect. Like you're gonna make mistakes in this game no matter what, but knowing how to recover from those mistakes, I think, is crucial. And I
Yeah.
think Dominic was very smart on that. Where when his mistake ended up causing his alliance to fall into flames and becoming a huge
Yeah.
target, he knew when to jump ship. He was able to set up the relationships to start up a new alliance with Oliver and Masterfy, and throw Taylor and Spencer under the bus and leave them to kind of deal with the wrath of Dominic's mistakes. Which is kind of why Taylor and Spencer have the bad taste in their mouths from Dominic and George, because they felt the wrath of what Dominic's mistakes were. But I will give credit to Dominic of that. And I guess George could also be credited to that as well. I think George was definitely as involved with that as Dominic in those decisions and how to recover from those blunders. But yeah, that's, I'd say, a plus for Dominic.
Yeah, and I kind of liked what you said, TJ, about him being a pretty well-rounded player character. His gameplay in certain aspects kind of reminds me of yours because he was great at making connections. I mean, he had his like 1A or whatever you called it, his 1A, which was
When it would
George.
be, yeah.
And then, I mean, I don't think he really had a 1B, but he was very good at just connecting himself with the rest of the house and just never being the target, even though he was such a big threat, especially in the long run. Um, so yeah, I think that definitely makes him deserving.
Yeah, I will say, Dominic, I think he has a very well-rounded game, but I don't think he has like a singular like move of him to point towards like, here's a great move I did or pulled off. Because even
Mm-hmm.
both of his HOHs, they were kind of the easy house targets.
Yeah.
He didn't really do
Yeah.
much of anything. It was like, he's fine, he's safe this week. Whoever goes home is fine. He just needs to sit there. Um,
Yeah, whereas someone like Oliver might be able to pull out one or two moves here that were, you know,
Definitely.
exponentially big.
Right, because Oliver was the driving force behind Landry going home, and then Star and Donnie. Although
Hmm.
I've always made the case that anyone would have made that move that week. It didn't necessarily need to be Oliver.
Yeah,
I think that was
but
a house
he
effort.
saw the opportunity and he
Yeah.
took it. Okay, this is still gotta give him the credit.
Even though I do
And he
think,
also has, yeah,
even though I do think, I don't think it was the best for Oliver's game for Oliver to be the one to do it.
yeah.
Because he was in an alliance with them, and burned those kind of social relationships he had with them.
But he also has that like overarching story of him and Masterfi kind of starting out alone together and playing the middle and then somehow surviving that and getting one side of the house out, the right side of the house out that they needed to get out. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, Oliver was really good at, for the early game, just kind of being under the radar. Like, the only notable thing I can think of about Oliver for the first few weeks was just the whole Landry Final 2 thing that became a big deal with him and Taylor.
Yeah.
But that kind of blew over pretty quickly. And other than that, like, Oliver was pretty under the radar until the end game, in which he really started kicking his game into high gear, which is a good strategy. But as I've said before about Oliver's game, a little boring. But I will
I
say,
disagree. But
I will say that this end game has slowly turned me around on Oliver. I do think I have been finding him more entertaining than I did. But yeah.
Yeah,
thoughts, TK, on
he-
your Prodigy house guest,
my prodigy,
your biggest fan.
my number one fan. Yeah. I mean, there was nothing really to say much about him. He was in the fold. And it goes to show it's not about how you start, it's how you finish. Because he definitely he won that. I think when he really turned around was when he was able to win that really that double eviction HOH. When he won that, like he was absolutely fucking made. Because like. Really, I don't know if he necessarily not. Oh no, it was that he saved 2 people, but like he really didn't have to get his hands dirty for any of that at the end of the day, and he was still smack dab in the middle. He wasn't associated with either side, so in a way couldn't get targeted by either side. And I mean, it goes without saying, like he makes it to that final 2, he's probably gonna take it just because he was still able to play his own game without really sullying a lot of other people in the jury and not being a part of the dirtiness that Dominic and George were a part of as well. So he's clear of that, and like it's probably gonna be a wash the way I see it. Maybe not a wash, but like he's the big contender right now. But he's got to win his last one. He's got to win this fucking HOH because if not, he's gonna be sitting 3rd place, and I'm gonna disown him. So yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Not
Yeah.
disown.
Well, I hope that
Pressure
doesn't
Oliver.
happen. I like how you brought up his double eviction week win, because I know when he won that, me and Crow were like, oh, I don't know if that was really the best decision for him, and he didn't mean to win it. It was on accident.
Yeah.
But you know, you gotta really give him credit for knowing who he needed to target and who he needed to keep close, which is kind of what sets him apart from.
Did he know though? Because he was. Did he know though? Because he was.
Figured it out eventually, okay, he figured it out eventually, and it worked out. Okay, he just needed to gather himself for a minute. The twist was making everyone go crazy. He figured it out.
He was
He
panicking.
got there eventually, and now he's here.
Because originally he wanted to save Star and Donnie for some reason. Who I don't.
Oh God.
Yeah.
We're not gonna talk about it. We're not gonna talk about it. He just learned the twist. He was frazzled.
He was like, I
Oh,
want to get them
goodness.
out, but I don't want to get them pissed, so I should save them. It was
No.
weird. I was
Then you ain't
very
getting them out.
But he didn't
do
do
that.
that.
Okay? He didn't do it.
I was.
I probably talked about doing some crazy shit by season 2. Okay.
But, like, but he's definitely doing well right now. So I didn't actually hear, but it sounds like Dominic won part 2.
We haven't finished part 2 yet. Dominic still needs to do it. Yeah.
Gotcha.
George
So-
beat. It was the same competition for part 3, and George beat both of our times by like 2 whole minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Didn't beat Zenithan though.
It was hard. It was
Yeah.
hard.
I can't.
Yeah, I don't think
can't wait to
anyone's
see that on his
upset.
wiki. Can't wait to see that on his winner wiki, George. That he beat both. Of us,
His
'cause that's
winner
so-
wiki.
Winner
Sure.
Wiki is crazy.
Oh God. This is just gonna be titled George Drag Session. Damn, poor George.
Yeah,
No.
I like George.
Yeah, I like
I
George.
like him as a person. He's
Yeah.
really sweet.
He is.
He is, and I know he can do better, and I hope he does do better in future orgs.
I will say that was
Watch him win.
that was definitely one of George's strong suit. Of I think he was kind of the most personable and likable out of everybody. And so compared to like people like Landry or Masterfi, who people found really annoying and didn't like as much,
Yeah.
he could have maybe had a chance if he kept those two people. And he was the one person who had a chance to keep those people both weeks they went home. Like he was the deciding vote in that, but he decided to send them home instead because that was what Dominic wanted. Um,
Yeah, unfortunately, at the end of the day, when it was Dominic versus George, Dominic just got what he wanted every single
Yeah.
time because he went out and got it, and I don't know. George
Yeah.
just never took any initiative, and now we're here.
yeah, poor George.
Poor George.
How's the
It's-
how's the jury holding up, by the way? How's
I was
the
just gonna
jury
bring up the
holding
jury.
up?
You know, since the huge fight they had with Taylor's arrival, I don't think much has happened.
I thought it was gonna be a little more explosive once Landry joined the
Yeah,
jury,
me
but
too.
nobody really said anything. Everyone was just like, "Yeah, we kind of expected this." That's the vibe I got.
Yeah, and Taylor was kind of like, Landry, we could have been great together. And I was like screaming. I was like, Taylor, that's what we've been saying. It was your fault.
I love
Late for all
Taylor
that, yeah.
so much, but I cannot fucking wait to just sit Taylor down and be like, "You made the biggest mistake. You were talking in jury about how you could have been a duo with Landry, and we were literally wanting that the entire fucking time because
Right.
it was your only way out. It was your only ticket to the end, and you just let it slip by, and it was awful. It was devastating.
And
so I
then-
cannot wait for them
Right.
to hear everything that we've been saying.
And Landry offered it to them on a silver platter and
Yes,
laid it out for them. Of like,
exactly.
we need to work
Like-
together. Here's why.
If both of them were unwilling and just hated each other the whole time, it would have been one thing. Like, oh, okay, that would have never happened. But it almost happened, and that is the terrible
Right.
part. Like, Taylor just needed to say yes and commit to it. And
Right. After that talk between them, and then Taylor was like, "Bullshit, I never do that." Me and Olivia, I was like, anyways.
Yeah.
biggest eye roll.
Yeah.
It's amazing to see how their rivalry sparked over something so benign at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's just very much blown out of proportion.
Our
Um,
favorite characters, our two favorite characters the whole season, were just at each other's
Crazy.
throats. It was
yeah.
terrible.
But yeah,
What could have been?
I'm very excited to see what the jury's gonna say, what they're gonna talk about. I'm very excited to talk openly about our opinions on the game to the other house guests.
I'm so excited.
Oh boy.
From what I've seen so far, it is kind of, if Oliver gets to final two, it looks like it's shifting in his direction because a lot of people have been saying really good things about his game and just him as a person. Whereas, how Crow mentioned earlier, a lot of the jurors are kind of upset with George and Dom.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think Oliver has a really good shot, but he just
Yeah.
needs to win the HOH.
Oliver,
Still.
has not done
Very
it.
much in
yeah.
TJ's position right now.
Yeah, if he doesn't
TJ
win,
coded.
he's going to get evicted. But yeah, he's
Yep.
hasn't pissed anybody off except Landry. But what's Landry gonna do about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, what should I do? Vote for George after giving that speech? Like, I don't think so. Probably not.
Yeah.
But yeah, this Final Three is definitely interesting. And I compare it to season one a lot. I will say I think the season one end game was a lot stronger because I think, especially the final three, I think that was very interesting. You all were very strong players. Where this one, I feel like Oliver and Dominic were good players, but not as great as the two people I have with me right here. And then we also have the like George, who's kind of like the obvious, like everyone's gonna take George and win against George easily. Compared to you guys, even the easy win of Senovan, I think would have been a bit not as easy compared to George.
He still had a great story, like
Yeah.
with our kind of unexpected final two, and then expected because everyone knew, but
Right.
him betraying me and then me getting him back on board, and it was still a good storyline for him, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And I do think there are ways that George could spin his game to make it seem to play it up and convince people to vote for him to win. But as TJ said, he doesn't have that confidence, and I don't think he
It's not
will
happening.
be able to do that, which is really unfortunate. But overall, pretty entertaining final three. I'm interested to see what happens. This season was a very great season. Overall, I do think I enjoyed it a little more than season one. We had a lot of strong
Okay,
characters and
I know.
players.
I understand. I'm a little biased because I was in season one, but if I'm looking at it from an outsider's perspective, a lot more happened
Yeah.
this season, and the characters were very. I keep saying characters. The players were a lot more evened out instead of just me and TJ dominating the whole season.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was a lot more interesting to watch the dynamics.
Yeah.
If I was in this season as a player, I would have an even harder time trying to
Exactly.
somehow fucking navigate all these people. I don't know
Yeah.
what.
I think
the
you'd
fuck
still
I'd do.
pull it out. but yeah, it would have been a lot more
boy.
difficult.
I think what I'm real. Oh, I mean, we can talk about that later. But I think season two has been definitely a much more of a roller coaster, and a lot of contenders have shifted and kind of came on top, had their highest highs and lowest lows, and yeah, this final three is gonna be something I'm very interested in. So props not for getting this far.
I mean, a roller coaster of a season fits the theme.
Yeah, carnival. There you go.
And we had plenty of clowns as well. Plenty of clowns and circus creatures and entertainment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited to see it all come to a close. And we'll talk more about the
Finale.
season. Yeah, and we'll talk more about the season
Indeed.
overall after that. But yeah, thank you, TJ, for joining us. And
No problem.
joining us on our shit talking session.
Yeah, absolutely.
George, we love you. George, we love you. You were amazing to watch. You're a very kind person. Shut up, George.
But yeah, we'll see everyone after finale. And yeah, goodbye.